Kyle Davidson stared out the viewport of the transport shuttle as it approached Nexus Station. The massive space station hung against the backdrop of swirling purple nebula clouds, its central hub sprouting 7 enormous arms like a metallic starfish. Each arm housed different sections of the Galactic Federation Academy, the most prestigious educational institution in known space. Kyle's stomach tightened with nerves. He was the first human ever accepted to the Academy. 6 months ago, when the acceptance message had appeared on his comm device, he couldn't believe it. Earth had only joined the Galactic Federation 3 years earlier, and relations were still tense. Most alien species viewed humans with suspicion or outright fear. Approaching Docking Base 7, announced the shuttle's AI in a pleasant voice. Please secure all belongings and prepare for artificial gravity adjustment. Kyle checked that his luggage was properly fastened. Among his few possessions from Earth was a special habitat container holding his pet corn snake, Noodle. The snake was currently curled up asleep, its orange and red scales gleaming under the habitat's soft light. I hope they let me keep you, buddy, Kyle whispered. The Academy rules permitted personal companions from home planets to help students adjust to life in space, but Kyle worried that Noodle might not qualify under those guidelines. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud. Kyle grabbed his bags and joined the line of new students shuffling toward the exit. Most were species he recognized from the Federation orientation materials: tall, willowy Ventusians with their plant-like skin, bulbous Arcturians who moved by controlled rolling, spindly Praxians whose skin changed colors based on their emotions. All of them gave Kyle a wide berth. He was used to this reaction by now. Humans came from what the Federation classified as a death world, a planet with extreme environmental conditions and dangerous wildlife that produced hardy, resilient species. To most galactic citizens, humans were unnervingly durable and potentially volatile. A Nexus Station official waited at the end of the docking tube, checking student credentials on a holographic display. Name and planet of origin? The official asked when Kyle approached. Kyle Davidson, Earth. The official's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession. Ah, yes, our special admission. You've been assigned to Dormitory Block C, Room 5017. Your roommate is another non-standard admission. Kyle wasn't sure if he should be offended by non-standard, but he just nodded and moved along. As he navigated through the crowded reception area, he noticed aliens whispering and pointing at him. Their translators weren't perfect, but he caught phrases like Deathworlder and Predator species. Block C turned out to be at the far end of the station's 3rd arm. By the time Kyle found his room, he was exhausted from dragging his luggage through the unfamiliar gravity. He pressed his palm against the door sensor, which glowed green and slid open. Inside, a young woman with dark hair pulled into a messy bun was unpacking clothes into a storage unit. You must be Kyle, she said, turning to face him. I'm Lily Kwan. Looks like we're the only humans in the entire academy. Kyle almost dropped Noodle's habitat in surprise. They didn't tell me my roommate would be another human. Lily shrugged. Probably afraid we'd eat the others if separated. Have you seen how they look at us, like we might snap and go on a rampage any second? I noticed, Kyle said, setting down his bags. Still, I thought we'd have alien roommates, for cultural exchange and all that. Apparently that's too much. Cultural exchange, Lily replied with a laugh. She pointed at Noodle's habitat. What's that? My pet snake. His name is Noodle. Lily approached cautiously. They let you bring a snake? Bold move. The guidelines said personal companions were allowed. Noodle qualifies. Kyle opened the top of the habitat slightly so Lily could see inside. The corn snake lifted its head, tongue flicking to taste the new environment. He's actually pretty cute, Lily admitted. But I'm not sure how the aliens will react. Most Federation species evolved on worlds without significant predators. They find Earth's wildlife terrifying. Kyle closed the habitat. Noodle's harmless. He eats frozen mice once a week and sleeps the rest of the time. Yeah, but he still looks like a predator. Those patterns evolved as camouflage for hunting, right? That concept alone might freak them out. Before Kyle could respond, His comm device chimed with an incoming message. It was his schedule for the next day, starting with Professor Zilnax's comparative xenobiology class. The first few weeks at the academy were overwhelming. Kyle struggled to adjust to the 26-hour station day and the bewildering variety of alien foods in the cafeteria. Most classes were fascinating but taught from perspectives so different from human education that he often found himself working twice as hard as others to understand basic concepts. The only class where Kyle felt confident was comparative xenobiology with Professor Zilnax, a gelatinous Arcturian who could reshape her body at will. Kyle's lifelong interest in biology gave him an advantage, and he quickly became one of the top students. 1 month into the semester, Professor Zilnax announced a special project. "Next week will be our Cultural Exchange Symposium," she said, her words translated through the classroom speakers. "Each student will present a harmless wildlife specimen from their home planet. This exercise helps us understand biological diversity across our galaxy." Excitement rippled through the classroom. A Ventusian student raised a leafy appendage. "Professor, what if our homeworld doesn't have wildlife as you define it?" "Excellent question, Zephyr. You may present any non-sentient organism. For plant-based species like yourself, you might share a specimen of a different plant type than your own evolutionary branch." Kyle's mind immediately went to Noodle. Here was a perfect opportunity to show his classmates that not everything from Earth was dangerous. A corn snake was considered a beginner pet on Earth, so docile that children could care for them. After class, he approached Professor Zilnax. "I'd like to present my pet snake for the symposium. Is that allowed?" The professor's gelatinous body rippled, which Kyle had learned indicated surprise. "A snake? Those are elongated reptilian predators, correct?" "Yes, but this species is completely harmless to intelligent beings. Corn snakes are constrictors, not venomous, and this one is captive-bred and hand-raised." Professor Zilnax seemed hesitant, but eventually agreed. "The purpose of this exercise is to expand understanding between species. Your snake might provide valuable perspective." As Kyle left the classroom, he felt optimistic. This was his chance to change how the Academy viewed humans and Earth. Once everyone saw how gentle Noodle was, maybe they'd stop treating Kyle like a dangerous animal himself. He had no idea that his simple class presentation would soon trigger a galactic diplomatic crisis. The week passed quickly as students prepared for the Cultural Exchange Symposium. Kyle spent extra time caring for Noodle, making sure the corn snake was well fed and calm. The night before the presentation, Lily watched with concern as Kyle polished Noodle's habitat until it gleamed. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" she asked, sitting cross-legged on her bed. "I overheard some Praxians talking about how their government almost didn't join the Federation because they feared Earth's wildlife." Kyle looked up from his work. "That's exactly why this is important. They need to see that Earth animals aren't all terrifying monsters. Noodle is gentle. Once they meet him, they'll understand." Lily didn't seem convinced. "Just be careful, okay? The Academy Board is already looking for reasons to limit human enrollment. We don't want to give them ammunition." "It'll be fine," Kyle assured her, though a small doubt crept into his mind. The next morning, the lecture hall was transformed for the symposium. Small display platforms had been arranged in a semicircle, each equipped with environmental controls to accommodate different atmospheric needs. Professor Zilnax floated at the center, her gelatinous body shimmering with anticipation. "Welcome to our Cultural Exchange Symposium," she announced. "Today we celebrate the rich biological diversity of our galaxy. Each presentation will last 5 minutes, followed by questions. Please remember that all specimens have been cleared by Academy security." Kyle noticed several high-ranking Academy officials seated in the back row. Among them was Ambassador Glix, the Praxian representative to the Federation Council. The ambassador's skin was a calm shade of green, indicating polite interest. The presentations began with Zephyr, the Ventusian student. He proudly displayed a floating seed pod from his homeworld that used atmospheric currents to travel vast distances. Next came an Arcturian with a colony of luminescent microbes that responded to sound by changing colors. Kyle watched each presentation with fascination. The variety of life forms across the galaxy was astounding. Though he noticed most were plants or simple organisms, few resembled anything like Earth's complex animal species. When his turn came, Kyle carried Noodle's habitat to the display platform. He could feel the room's attention shift, a sudden tension in the air. "For my presentation," Kyle began, "I'd like to introduce you to Noodle, a corn snake from Earth. Snakes are reptiles that have evolved without limbs, using muscular movements to travel." He smiled at his classmates. "On Earth, corn snakes are popular pets even for children. They're completely harmless to humans and other large creatures." A murmur ran through the audience. Kyle noticed Ambassador Glix's skin had darkened slightly, toward blue. Noodle is 4 years old and about 5 feet long, which is average for his species. He eats once a week and spends most of his time resting. Kyle carefully opened the habitat. "With your permission, Professor Zilnax, I'd like to show how docile he is by handling him." Professor Zilnax seemed hesitant, but nodded. "Proceed, but please maintain a safe distance from other students." Kyle gently lifted Noodle from his habitat. The snake moved slowly, curling around Kyle's wrist and forearm. Several students gasped. An Illuvian in the front row emitted a high-pitched sound that Kyle's translator couldn't process. "As you can see," Kyle continued, trying to keep his voice calm and reassuring, "Noodle is very relaxed. He's using his tongue to smell his surroundings. Snakes have an organ called the Jacobson's organ that allows them to detect chemical particles. In the air." Noodle flicked his tongue more rapidly, interested in the new sense of the classroom. The snake began to move up Kyle's arm, exploring. That's when things went wrong. Ambassador Glix stood abruptly, skin now a deep blue. "That creature is displaying hunting behavior. It's preparing to strike." No, Kyle said quickly. "He's just curious. This is normal exploration." But panic had already taken hold. A Centaurian student named Vex let out a piercing alarm call that caused several other species to bolt from their seats. Professor Zilnax tried to restore order, her gelatinous form expanding as she raised her voice. "Please remain calm. The specimen has been approved and poses no danger." Her words came too late. Ambassador Glix, backing away from Kyle, bumped into another student, a Praxian junior diplomat. As a defensive reflex, the young Praxian released a cloud of spores, a natural response to perceived threats on their homeworld. The spores drifted through the classroom, causing 3 Illuvian students to immediately collapse, their respiratory systems unable to filter the foreign particles. A Ventusian began to shrivel, the plant-like structure of their body reacting poorly to the chemical composition. "Emergency protocols initiated," announced the classroom AI as sensors detected the biological disturbance. Transparent barriers dropped from the ceiling, isolating different sections of the room. Warning lights flashed red along the walls. The chaos. Kyle stood frozen, Noodle still peacefully wrapped around his arm, completely oblivious to the panic he had caused. Through a barrier, Kyle could see Professor Zilnax trying to reach the emergency override controls while simultaneously attempting to assist the affected students. The classroom doors slid open as Academy security personnel in protective suits rushed in. Behind them came medical staff with specialized equipment for different species. "Step away from the Earth creature," ordered the lead security officer, aiming a containment device at Kyle. "He's not dangerous," Kyle protested but carefully placed Noodle back in his habitat. The security team surrounded Kyle, creating a perimeter. One officer approached with a scanner, moving it up and down Kyle's body as if checking for contamination. "The human appears unaffected by the Praxian spores," the officer reported. "Resilient physiology consistent with Deathworld adaptation." Kyle caught a glimpse of Ambassador Glix speaking urgently into a communication device. The ambassador's skin had now turned almost black, a color Kyle had never seen on a Praxian before. Lily somehow managed to push through the security perimeter, reaching Kyle's side. "This is bad," she whispered. "Really bad. I just overheard someone say they're contacting the Federation Council for an emergency session. Over a corn snake?" Kyle couldn't believe what was happening. "This is a misunderstanding. Noodle didn't do anything." "It's not about what he did," Lily explained, watching as medical staff administered treatments to the affected students. about what they think he could do. Look around. Most species here evolved without dealing with predators. The very concept terrifies them. A senior Academy official approached, flanked by security. Kyle Davidson, your specimen will be placed in secure containment until further notice. You are confined to quarters pending review by the Xenobiological Safety Committee. As security escorted him from the classroom, habitat in hand, Kyle caught a final glimpse of the symposium through the doorway. What had begun as a cultural exchange had devolved into a scene resembling a biohazard emergency. And somehow, his pet corn snake, one of the gentlest creatures on Earth, was now being treated as a threat to galactic security. Kyle sat on his bed in the dormitory, staring at Noodle's empty habitat. The Academy security team had taken his pet snake to a secure biological containment facility somewhere on Nexus Station. He had been confined to his quarters for 3 days now, allowed to leave only for basic necessities and with a security escort. Lily entered the room, carrying a tray from the cafeteria. "I brought you lunch," she said, setting it down next to him. "Some kind of protein cube and vegetable paste. I think it's supposed to be Earth-compatible." "Thanks," Kyle said without enthusiasm. "Any news?" Lily hesitated, then pulled out her datapad. "It's getting complicated. The incident is all over the galactic network. Look." She showed him a news feed. Headlines scrolled across the screen. Earth. Predator causes panic at Galactic Academy. 3 students still recovering after snake incident. Federation Council debates Earth wildlife restrictions. Kyle groaned. "This is insane. Noodle didn't even do anything. He just flicked his tongue." "I know," Lily said, sitting beside him. "But you have to understand how the others see it. Most Federation species evolved on worlds with minimal environmental threats. They developed technology to overcome natural challenges instead of adapting physically like Earth species did. So they're afraid of us because we evolved with actual predators? Pretty much. Some of them think all Earth creatures must be dangerous because they survived on a planet where things like tigers and sharks exist." Lily scrolled through more news items. The Praxian Diplomatic Corps is demanding a full review of Earth's status in the Federation. They're calling for stricter controls on human travelers. A chime sounded, indicating someone at the door. It slid open to reveal Professor Zilnax, her gelatinous form contained in a hover field that allowed her to maintain shape more easily outside her natural environment. "Professor," Kyle said, standing quickly. "I'm so sorry about what happened. In class, is everyone okay?" "The affected students have recovered," she replied, her translated voice surprisingly gentle. "I came to inform you that the Xenobiological Safety Committee has scheduled your hearing for tomorrow. As your faculty advisor, I will be present to support you." "Am I going to be expelled?" Kyle asked directly. Professor Zilnax's form rippled. "Slightly. The situation is unprecedented. No one is suggesting you intended harm. However, the committee must determine whether Earth wildlife poses an unacceptable risk to the Academy. And Noodle, is he okay? Your serpent is being well cared for by our xenobiology department. They find it fascinating." There was a hint of scientific curiosity in her translated tone. "I must admit, I have studied the creature myself. Its method of locomotion without appendages is quite remarkable." After Professor Zilnax left, Kyle turned to Lily. "We need to do something. This isn't just about Noodle anymore. They're using this to question whether humans belong in the Federation at all. What can we do? We're just 2 students." Kyle thought for a moment. "Education, they're afraid because they don't understand. We need to help them understand Earth biology better." The next morning, Kyle stood before the Xenobiological Safety Committee in a formal hearing chamber. 5 senior Academy officials sat behind a curved table, with Ambassador Glix to one side as an observer. Professor Zilnax floated nearby in her hover field. Lily had been allowed to attend, but sat in the back of the room. The committee chair, a tall Ventusian elder named Philos, spoke first. "This hearing will determine whether the Earth specimen known as a corn snake represents a significant safety risk to Academy personnel and students." Kyle listened as various experts presented their assessments. A security officer showed footage from the classroom incident, emphasizing the aggressive tongue-flicking behavior that had triggered the panic. A xenobiologist displayed scans of Noodle's internal structure, pointing out the muscles used for constriction with ominous commentary. When it was finally Kyle's turn to speak, he took a deep breath. "Honorable committee members, I understand your concerns, but there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about Earth biology. May I request a visual demonstration?" Phylos conferred briefly with the other committee members. "Proceed, but with caution." Kyle activated the room's holographic display system, which he had prepared with Lily's help the night before. "This is Earth," he said, showing their home planet. "It's classified as a death world because it has extreme variations in climate, terrain, and a high number of predator species." He zoomed in to show a simple food chain diagram. All ecosystems require balance. On Earth, predators like snakes help control populations of smaller animals like mice, preventing them from becoming too numerous and damaging the environment. Kyle cycled through images of various Earth snakes. There are many species of snakes on Earth. Some are venomous, but many, like corn snakes, are not. Humans have kept corn snakes as companions for centuries, precisely because they're gentle and pose no threat to us. He showed footage from Earth of children handling corn snakes at a pet store, then families keeping them in homes. On Earth, these animals are considered so safe that they're recommended as first pets for young children. Kyle noticed some committee members showing signs of discomfort at the images, but at least they were listening. He continued, "The behavior that caused alarm, the tongue flicking, is simply how snakes gather information about their surroundings. It's like how Arcturians change density to sense vibrations, or how Ventusians extend root filaments to test soil composition." Ambassador Glix, whose skin had maintained a cautious blue-green throughout the hearing, spoke up. "The issue is not merely the behavior, but the evolutionary purpose behind it. This creature evolved as a predator. Its very existence is designed around the hunting and consuming of other living beings." "With respect, Ambassador," Kyle replied, "the same could be said of nearly all Earth fauna, including humans. We evolved as omnivores with predatory characteristics. Does that make us too dangerous for the Federation?" The room fell silent. Kyle realized he might have gone too far, but continued more gently. "What I'm trying to explain is that predation is normal on Earth. It doesn't make every predator species dangerous to sentient beings. Noodle has never shown aggression toward anything larger than a small mouse, and even those are pre-deceased before I feed him." Professor Zilnax moved forward slightly. "If I may add, committee members, in my professional assessment as a xenobiologist, the Earth snake represents minimal risk if properly contained and supervised. Its behavior in my classroom, while alarming to those unfamiliar with Earth fauna, was consistent with normal exploratory patterns rather than aggression." The committee members conferred quietly among themselves. Kyle waited anxiously, aware that more than just Noodle's fate hung in the balance. This decision could affect how the entire Federation viewed humans and Earth. Finally, Phylos addressed the room. "This committee requires additional time to consider all evidence presented. Until a final decision is reached, the Earth specimen will remain in secure containment, and Kyle Davidson will remain under supervision. This hearing is adjourned." As Kyle left the chamber with Professor Zilnax and Lily, he noticed a group of students waiting in the corridor, not just humans, but various alien species, including several who had been present during the classroom incident. "What are they doing here?" Kyle asked. Lily smiled. "They're curious. After seeing your defense, they want to learn more about Earth biology. Some of them are even asking to observe Noodle under controlled conditions." Professor Zilnax's form rippled, and what Kyle had learned was her species' equivalent of a nod. "Fear often stems from ignorance. You have begun the educational process, Kyle Davidson. Perhaps that is the first step toward greater understanding. Between worlds." For the first time in days, Kyle felt a glimmer of hope. He might have accidentally started a diplomatic incident, but maybe, just maybe, he could turn it into an opportunity for Earth to be better understood in the galactic community. News of the dangerous Earth predator, spread throughout the Galactic Federation like wildfire. The incident at Nexus Station became the most discussed topic on interstellar communication channels. Species that had never paid attention to Earth suddenly wanted to know everything about the Deathworld and its inhabitants. 1 week after the hearing, Kyle was still under restricted movement, but at least allowed to attend classes again. As he walked through the academy corridors, other students no longer avoided him. Instead, they watched him with a mix of caution and new respect. "It's weird," Kyle said to Lily as they sat together in the cafeteria. "Last month they acted like I might attack them. Now they treat me like I'm some kind of exotic, dangerous creature they want to study." Lily nodded, picking at her food. "I got 3 interview requests from Galactic Network channels yesterday. Everyone wants to know what it's like growing up on a death world. Have you seen the security around the xenobiology lab? They've got Noodle locked up like he's a biological weapon." Kyle shook his head in frustration. "Professor Zilnax says they're running all kinds of tests on him." "Speaking of Professor Zilnax," Lily said, nodding toward the entrance. The gelatinous professor glided toward their table, her translucent body containing swirls of color that indicated excitement in her species. "Kyle Davidson, I have news regarding your serpent companion," she announced, settling her hover field next to their table. "The committee has authorized a controlled observation session. Select academy personnel and students will be permitted to observe the Earth creature under strict safety protocols." Kyle brightened immediately. "That's great. When can I see Noodle?" "The session is scheduled for tomorrow. You will be allowed to handle the specimen to demonstrate its docile nature." Professor Zilnax's colors shifted to a more serious pattern. "However, I must inform you that the political situation has become more complex." "What do you mean?" Kyle asked. "The Federation Council is holding emergency sessions regarding Earth's status. Some representatives argue that if Earth's harmless wildlife is this concerning, then perhaps humans themselves pose a greater threat than previously assessed." Kyle's heart sank. This was exactly what he had feared. His innocent class presentation, spiraling into potential diplomatic disaster for Earth. "There's more," Professor Zilnax continued. "Admiral Zora of the Federation Fleet has proposed increasing military patrols near Earth's solar system as a precautionary measure." "Military patrols?" Lily exclaimed. "Because of a corn snake?" Professor Zilnax's form rippled, and what Kyle had learned was her equivalent of a shrug. "The Admiral is known for her caution regarding new Federation members. She views the incident as evidence that Earth biology may be more dangerous than initially classified." The next day, Kyle arrived at the xenobiology laboratory for the observation session. The room had been modified with transparent barriers separating the viewing area from a central containment zone where Noodle's habitat had been placed. About 20 people were present: academy officials, senior students from various species, and 3 members of the Federation Council who had traveled to witness the Earth creature firsthand. To Kyle's surprise, Ambassador Glix was among them, skin now a cautious yellow-green. Professor Zilnax guided Kyle to the containment zone entrance. "Remember, move slowly and explain everything you're doing. Many observers have never seen predator handling before." Kyle nodded and entered the zone. Through the transparent barriers, he could see the observers watching intently, some with recording devices, others with scientific instruments. He approached Noodle's habitat, relieved to see his pet looked healthy and well cared for. "This is a corn snake, scientific name Pantherophis guttatus," Kyle began, keeping his voice calm and educational. "They're non-venomous constrictors native to the eastern regions of North America on Earth. This individual's name is Noodle, and he's been my companion for 4 years." Kyle carefully opened the habitat. "I'm going to handle him now to demonstrate how docile these animals typically are with humans. The slow movements you'll see are to avoid startling him, not because he's dangerous." He gently lifted Noodle from the enclosure. The snake moved lazily, wrapping around Kyle's hand and forearm as he had done hundreds of times before. Kyle heard murmurs from the observers but continued his explanation. "Corn snakes have been kept as pets on Earth for generations. They're often recommended for beginners because of their gentle temperament and simple care requirements." Kyle slowly turned to show Noodle from different angles. The tongue flicking you see is how he smells his environment. It's not an aggressive behavior. One of the council members, a Centaurian elder, leaned closer to the barrier. It appears to be constricting your arm. Is it not attempting to eliminate you as it would prey? Kyle smiled. No, he's just securing himself so he doesn't fall. Snakes like to feel secure when they're being held. The pressure is very gentle. To demonstrate, Kyle easily unwrapped Noodle and allowed him to move between his hands. See? No constriction, just normal movement. For nearly an hour, Kyle answered questions about snakes, Earth wildlife, and human coexistence with predator species. To his surprise, the questions became increasingly thoughtful rather than fearful. Even Ambassador Glix eventually approached the barrier, skin shifting to a more curious blue-green. In Praxian evolution, the ambassador said, we developed technology to protect ourselves from environmental threats. We never needed to adapt to predators because we eliminated them. It is difficult for us to comprehend living alongside creatures evolved to consume others. That's understandable, Kyle replied. But on Earth, the ecosystem depends on balance between all species. Predators like snakes help control populations of smaller animals that might otherwise become harmful to the environment. After the session concluded, Professor Zilnax approached Kyle as he returned Noodle to his habitat. Most impressive, Kyle Davidson. Your presentation was both informative and remarkably effective at reducing anxiety levels among the observers. The biometric readings showed a 43% decrease in stress indicators across all species present. Does this mean Noodle can come back to our quarters? Kyle asked hopefully. Not yet, I'm afraid, but this demonstration will be added to the evidence. Before the committee, she gestured toward where Admiral Zora stood in deep conversation with two council members. More importantly, your educational approach appears to be having a positive effect on some key decision makers. Later that evening, Lily burst into their dormitory room, waving her datapad excitedly. Kyle, you're not going to believe this. The Galactic Network is running a special report on Earth wildlife, and it's actually positive. She showed him the screen. The report featured educational content about Earth's ecosystem, explaining how humans had learned to live alongside various predator species. The tone was surprisingly balanced, focusing on the evolutionary advantages that had allowed Earth species to develop such diversity. There's more, Lily said. Some students are petitioning for a new xenobiology course specifically about Earth. They're calling it Understanding Deathworld Ecosystems. Kyle felt a mix of relief and cautious optimism. So they're starting to see us as more than just dangerous Deathworlders. Maybe. Lily sat down beside him. But there's still the Federation Council vote tomorrow on the proposed security measures for Earth. Admiral Zora has a lot of influence. Kyle nodded. The situation was improving, but Earth's standing in the galactic community still hung in the balance, all because of one small corn snake named Noodle. The day of the Federation Council vote arrived. Kyle couldn't focus on his classes, constantly checking his datapad for updates. By midday, he and Lily had given up pretending to study, and instead sat in their dormitory room, refreshing the newsfeed every few minutes. Anything yet? Kyle asked for the dozenth time. Lily shook her head. Still in session. These votes can take hours, especially with representatives from over 200 worlds needing to weigh in. A chime sounded at their door. It slid open to reveal Professor Zilnax, her gelatinous form showing swirls of colors that Kyle couldn't interpret. Professor? Kyle stood quickly. Is there news? The council session continues, she replied. However, I come with a different purpose. The Xenobiological Safety Committee has reached a decision regarding your companion creature. Kyle held his breath, afraid to hope. After extensive study and the successful observation session, the committee has determined that the Earth Serpent poses minimal risk under proper supervision. Professor Zilnax's colors shifted to a brighter pattern. You may return your companion to your quarters with certain safety protocols in place. Kyle couldn't contain his smile. That's fantastic. When can I get him? Immediately. A security escort will accompany us to the xenobiology laboratory. As they walked through the academy corridors, Kyle noticed something different. The other students they passed didn't shy away as they once had. Some even nodded in greeting. A few Ventusian students actually approached, their leaf-like appendages rustling with curiosity. "Davidson," one of them said, "is it true that on Earth some plants consume animals, like reverse predators?" "You mean like Venus flytraps?" Kyle answered. "Yes, we have carnivorous plants that catch insects and small organisms." The Ventusians rippled their leaves in what Kyle recognized as their version of excited conversation. One of them spoke again. "We are organizing a study group on Earth biology. Would you and Quan consider participating? Your practical knowledge would be valuable." "Sure," Kyle said, surprised and pleased. "I'd be happy to help." At the laboratory, Noodle was waiting in his habitat. The snake seemed unperturbed by his time in scientific containment, lazily flicking his tongue as Kyle approached. "Hey, buddy," Kyle said softly, opening the habitat to stroke Noodle's smooth scales. "Ready to go home?" As they prepared to leave, a laboratory technician handed Kyle a small device. "This is a biosecurity monitor," the technician explained. "It will alert security if the serpent leaves your quarters without authorization. Standard procedure for all non-standard companion creatures." Kyle accepted the device, attaching it to Noodle's habitat. It seemed a small price to pay for having his pet back. They had just returned to the dormitory when Lily's datapad chimed with an urgent alert. "The council vote," she exclaimed, quickly bringing up the feed. The holodisplay showed the grand chamber of the Federation Council. Representatives from countless worlds filled the curved tiers of seats, with the High Council seated at the center. Admiral Zora stood at the speaking platform, her formal military attire gleaming under the chamber lights. "And in conclusion," the Admiral was saying, "while I maintain that proper security protocols must be established, I am withdrawing my proposal for additional military presence in Earth's sector. Recent educational initiatives have demonstrated that understanding rather than force is the appropriate response to Earth's unique biological situation." Kyle and Lily exchanged shocked glances. "Did she just—" Kyle began. "She did," Lily confirmed. "But why?" The feed switched to Ambassador Glix, now approaching the platform. The Praxian's skin was a calm, diplomatic green as he addressed the council. "The incident at the Academy has been educational for us all," Ambassador Glix began. "My initial reaction to the Earth predator was based on fear born of ignorance. Having now observed this creature and learned more about Earth's ecosystem, I believe we have been approaching this situation incorrectly." The ambassador's skin shifted to a thoughtful blue. "Earth evolved differently than most Federation worlds. Its predator-prey relationships created environmental pressures that shaped its species, including humans, in unique ways. Rather than fearing this difference, we should recognize its value." Kyle could hardly believe what he was hearing. The same ambassador who had panicked at the sight of Noodle was now defending Earth's evolutionary path. "Therefore," Ambassador Glix continued, "I propose establishing an Earth biological research initiative to be housed at the Academy. This will allow controlled study of Earth species and promote greater understanding between our worlds." The feed showed various council members nodding in agreement. When the vote came, it passed by an overwhelming margin. Professor Zilnax, who had remained quietly observing, now spoke. "A most satisfactory outcome. The Academy will be contacting Earth's educational institutions to coordinate the initiative. I anticipate we will request additional specimens, under proper protocols, of course." "So they want more Earth animals at the Academy?" Kyle asked, still processing this unexpected turn of events. "Indeed, the incident with your serpent has created considerable scientific interest. Many species now wish to understand how Earth developed such complex predator-prey relationships." Professor Zilnax's form rippled with what Kyle had learned was amusement. "I believe the term being used is controlled exposure therapy for the galactic community." 3 months later, Kyle stood proudly beside the newly constructed Earth Biological Research Center at the Academy. What had begun as a small classroom incident had evolved into the most significant cultural exchange program in the Federation's recent history. The research center featured carefully designed habitats housing various non-threatening Earth species, from small mammals like guinea pigs to insects like butterflies. Each habitat had educational displays explaining the species' role in Earth's ecosystem. Noodle, now something of a celebrity, had a special display of his own. Visitors from across the galaxy came to observe the infamous first contact predator that had caused such a stir. Kyle often volunteered as a guide, patiently explaining Earth biology to curious aliens. The funniest part, Kyle said to Lily, as they watched a group of Arcturian students marvel at a terrarium of earthworms, is that Noodle isn't even remotely dangerous by Earth standards. Wait until they learn about sharks or lions. One step at a time, Lily cautioned with a smile. Let's not give Admiral Zora a reason to rethink those military patrols. Ambassador Glix approached them, his skin a friendly shade of blue-green. Davidson, Quan. I bring news from the Council. Earth's application for expanded Federation status has been approved. Your world will now have voting rights on all biological research committees. That's fantastic news, Ambassador, Kyle replied. Indeed. Your small reptile has accomplished what years of diplomacy could not. The ambassador's skin rippled with subtle patterns of respect. It has taught us an important lesson about fear and understanding. Sometimes what we perceive as dangerous is merely unfamiliar. As the ambassador departed, Kyle gently tapped on Noodle's habitat. The corn snake lifted his head, tongue flicking lazily. Hear that, buddy? You're an interstellar diplomat now. Kyle smiled. Not bad for a creature humans consider a beginner pet. From that day forward, whenever new species joined the Federation, they received mandatory education about Earth's wildlife. Earth's harmless creatures, the orientation materials explained, are windows into understanding one of the galaxy's most unique ecosystems. And at the Academy, students would tell new arrivals the legend of the human who brought a snake to class and accidentally changed the course of galactic diplomacy forever.